On 3, 2, 1. Well, Brent Hale,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming.
You bet. Good to be here.
We have a lot to cover in the next 20 minutes.
Let's
and
do it.
I'm super grateful to have a second to sit and talk to you. I've wanted to have this interview. We've had a lot of these informal talks as we go around. I thought maybe the best place to start was, and make sure you don't let me just say something that isn't true. Doctors have said that with your primary progressive multiple sclerosis, that you probably should be in a wheelchair by now.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're not.
I'm not.
And I wanted to, so here's a story. Last week we had a young lady come in and talk about her, was it her husband? No, it was her daughter.
It was her.
Oh, it was her. We had a lady come in and she has, I'm not sure which type of MS, and I'd like to learn a little more about those from you. But she has some real struggles, and man, if there was anybody that would know anything about it, it would be you on a lot of different levels. And I want you to know that I really admire watching you work out. I don't know if that's the right word, but you'll come in, and over the last, you've been here 7 years?
Sure.
And I watch you come in here, and every single time you work out, I think this time he's going to cut a corner. This time he's going to go less weight. This time he's going to take it easy on himself, and you never do. So I wanted to cover a bunch of ground there today. First of all, I'd like to kind of talk about what is primary progressive MS, and do I have that right?
Sure.
Let's start there.
Okay, good. Yeah. There's different kinds of MS. The one that most people have, about 90% of the people, is called relapsing and remitting MS. So they'll go along, and that can last for years and years and years without progressing too far.
Right. They even get better, right? In terms of it stops progressing. I've read a bunch on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be really bad for a while, and then they'll resolve and come back to pretty much normal. And there's triggers for it and so forth. It's pretty disruptive in people's lives. It eventually becomes secondary progressive MS, which is much like primary progressive MS. And at that point, you're not coming back. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and then eventually you're into disability and so forth. Primary progressive MS just basically starts out that way, and the speed at which it progresses is varying from different kinds of people. My particular, I've been diagnosed now 14 years that I've had it, and during that period of time, I've been very aggressive on what I could be doing to preserve my health. And obviously exercise is a big part of that, diet is a big part of that. I follow a lot of research.
Like the cutting edge stuff.
Oh yeah,
I can't wait to get into
the
some
stuff
of that.
that's just small scale studies that look positive, then I'm jumping on trying things out, and some of it works out pretty well and some of it doesn't work out well at all. But it's it's an experimentation. The very first symptoms I had actually were in 2004 after I'd climbed Kilimanjaro with a buddy, and coming down off the mountain, we're kind of in a blizzard, and I lost some toenails and was long hike downhill, and I was clenching my muscles and my legs and stuff. And I found as I was running up in the foothills that my right foot was dropping. And I wasn't aware that it was, because I didn't know where it was in space, and so I would trip and roll down the mountain and thought, this is really weird, and went in and had some tests, and they said, yep, your nerve impulses have really slowed down, and the amplitude is only half of what they need to be in that leg. And so we thought initially it was just a nerve problem, but it's progressed from there, and then after all of the tests with the spinal taps and stuff, they've pinned it down to the primary progressive stuff.
Let's go backwards for those that might not know. What is MS?
MS is multiple sclerosis. It has to do with lesions on the nerves. So it's in the spine or in the brain. What happens is the myelin sheath that covers the nerve, that insulates the nerve impulse, gets eaten away by it's an autoimmune disorder, so it gets eaten away by the immune system. And then what happens is you have nerve impulses that aren't reaching the muscles, or that are reaching the muscles at a very diminished amplitude. Eventually, they developed into kind of tangles, as it were, and you have a complete blockage, and so you lose ability. And it can happen anywhere in your brain, anywhere in your spine. It affects your sight. For me, I have all sorts of strange little symptoms. For example, I noticed about 10 years ago that I stopped being able to sweat.
What?
So I don't sweat. So you'll notice that when I'm working out, I'll be in front of the fan.
I have noticed that.
Yeah. And I overheat real easily, so sometimes if I'm doing an exercise and I find myself overheating, then I'll have to stop to cool down.
I've seen you do that. I wondered what the thing was.
And
is that common, or is that just yours?
Yeah, all sorts of really strange things that come with that. I don't know, just a bunch of little things. Balance is a big one.
Yeah.
Obviously, I work really hard on exercising balance and doing the best I can to keep that up, but I have to be really careful. I fall over a lot. So.
I watch you grab stuff and throw it over your head, and every time, and I see you kind of stumble as you do that, and there's an impulse in me that wants to run over and be like, whoa, hold on a minute. But I know you know what you're doing, and so I just leave you alone. And up till now, I hate to even say it out loud, but up till now, you're fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I do okay.
Is that part of your regimen?
Is
that part of how? Is that on purpose? Are you trying to put yourself in situations where you force your mind to control your?
I have to challenge. Yeah, I keep challenging the parts that I'm losing.
Okay.
And by challenging it, I think I preserve it a little bit better.
Not to get too personal, what are some of your other symptoms, and if somebody else maybe was suffering with some of the same things, when do they get checked? I'm wondering, like, how do you know? How do you know when you've got it, and then once you've got it, how do you know what the next step is? So maybe you could just take us through what your steps were, and like your foot started dropping, you started falling. What was sort of the next symptom?
Well, those were the ones that I started checking on, following through. I got some really good medical help up at the U. Started working with some good doctors who kept saying to me they thought it might be, and they wanted to do spinal taps to confirm it. I wasn't too anxious to do spinal taps because of some of the associated problems with those, but finally agreed to. What you see is a lot of little things, like, for example, if I'm exercising and we're doing something where I'm repeatedly using the same muscle, it fails much quicker than it used to, and then it doesn't recover as quickly. And so sometimes I'll modify what I'm doing here so that I'll try to do all of the same exercises, but I'll break them up so I'm using different muscle groups in order to avoid that problem from taking place. Things like, just strange little things. If I hold my hand in a certain place, the nerve impulses to that hand trigger other parts of my body. I mean, it's just weird little things like that. I don't. You notice I always have a water bottle, because my mouth gets dry just real quickly. Yeah. And so I just need to keep a little water in it all the time.
Just because of the mouth, you're not actually dehydrated.
No, I'm not dehydrated.
And that's not a way to cool the system.
It's just a matter of keeping it comfortable for me.
Right.
When I run, here's the big deal. I'm losing the ability to have complex movements. So for years and years as I skied, when I was in college, I was an instructor up at Snowbird teaching aerials and backflips and stuff like that.
Wow.
And so I always had really, really, really good balance. But now I can't jump the rope. So you'll notice what I'll do is I'll go over to the wall and I'll put my hands on the wall so I don't fall over, and I'll jump up and down.
Right.
Try to keep the leaping ability a little bit.
As much of the jump roping as you can do.
Yeah, my wife and I served in an LDS mission for a couple of years doing some humanitarian stuff. And when we got back, I went up skiing with all my kids, and all my kids are pretty aggressive skiers and snowboarders and stuff, and they're upside down more than they're right side up and stuff. But what I found was that we immediately went for the deep powder in the trees and the big drops, and I found myself, I knew all of the movements, and I could still do all of the movements, but I couldn't do them in the sequence at the timing just right to be able to do it. And so I had to pull out of the trees and out of the bumps and start going on more groomers. And I remember skiing down the hill, flying down the hill, asking myself the question, what am I going to focus on right now? The loss of the ability to do that, or the fact that I'm still up on the hill and I'm having a great time and I'm with the people I love. You know, and that's kind of what you have to do with this stuff. Is there's always little things you're giving up along the way. But there's so much about life that is wonderful and good, and that you can still do. I still travel the world, you know, I do aggressive
and that's
adventure
highly
stuff.
Stressful.
Yeah, yeah.
The kind of stuff that you do is highly stressful. That brings us to the next set of questions that I have, and we only have a few minutes left. But if you could tell us, there's several parts of this question. The first part of the question is, what are you doing and why? Like, how have you kept yourself out of that wheelchair? What specifically is it? And I realize that there's a part of this that's behavioral, and there wouldn't be a person that knows more about that behavioral adjustment and changing behavior than you would. Like, you've built several businesses behind or around changing one's behavior. Tell us what you do.
Well, I've got a PhD and a couple PhDs in different areas of psychology, and so I've started a company with a partner called Brent Hale Consulting, and it's one where we do solution-focused problem solving for individuals through organizations. So our clients are large groups, like the state of Utah is a client, and universities and large businesses, and their employees can come in and get help for any kind of a problem into our clinics with our therapists. And we just do a lot more, you know, and part of that is that we're involved in a lot of training for them. So we put on something called Powerful Brain, Healthy Body.
Yes, I love
where
that.
We're training people to acquire health-related habits much more easily. Also, with the University of Utah, I started a company called Orion, which is an accountability-based health wellness program that has clients all over the United States and is growing. And we've trained a lot of nurses and health educators in behavior change processes. And because our behavior change processes are much more, how should I say it? They're more connected to real life than most programs that have counselors or coaches. What we're able to do is literally change the health-related habits of large populations of people and reduce their health costs by about 20%. So, and we're getting a lot of notoriety around the country right now because of that.
Yeah, I actually heard of you before you ever came in here. I knew about that, and I'm hyper impressed with what you guys do. And the thing that I like the most is that you show that every day. When you come in here and work out, you're doing the things that your company is taking to the world, and that impresses me. I like the thoughts of that. Anytime somebody can come and show that they're a product of their own product, that always means something to me, and which is why
you got to live it instead of just say it, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm so grateful you'd come and talk to us today. Back to the original question, in terms of exercise for those that are trying to progress, because I think there's a lot of application to applying your specific condition to exercise. And the reason I think there is because as I get older, I'm 48 now, And I've noticed that there are things that I have to back off. Like what you just said about moving it around the muscle groups, I've noticed that my programming has turned to such that I'm moving the stimulus around a lot more during the week. And I feel like that has specific application to me,
Sure,
and
yeah.
I was hanging on those. So could you describe to me any more? Is it mainly that, or is there an intensity level that you'll strive for? How much rest do you need? What's your nutrition like? And then lastly, what are some of the behavior modifications that you use in terms of, like what you just said? I thought to myself, skiing down the hill, I can sit here and focus on specific aspects, and I love that you took a really positive swing there. That means a lot to me because I see it in here. I see people become defeated and leave, and I never see them again.
Yep.
And I wish they knew that one thing you just said.
Yeah, boy, you're gonna like.
Yeah,
ask
a lot of
questions.
questions. A lot of questions.
goes
Sorry.
quicker.
First one is how do you change your fitness? What specifically are you doing in terms of stimulus and rest?
Yeah, I find that you have to listen to your body, which is a real paradox because I find if I listen to my body too much, that I give up too early. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so-
I've found that you can't say that to people that don't have experience talking to their body. You get these people that'll come in, and I've done it myself, where we'll come in, I haven't worked out in literally 20 years, and I'm going to listen to my body. I'm like, you two don't speak the same language. There's no way you're listening to your body if you you don't know what it's saying.
Yeah, for me, it's like if I focus too much on the weakness that is present that I didn't used to have, because there's a weakness that your nerves aren't firing quite right? Then it feels like I become very disempowered very quickly. And it's like I feel like, well, okay, instead of doing 6 rounds, I'll do 3 rounds. And that's just very automatic for me if I'm focusing too much on that, right? So what I do with my head is I say, okay, let me see how much of that I can actually do. Let me push it a little bit and see how much of that I can actually do. And when I get to a point where, it's fatiguing, I'll say, well, can I reasonably do, let's go one more round and see what happens. See, so it's an engagement process, okay? But
You're not taking away from yourself, you're adding to.
yeah, but I got to be careful with that because I have a tendency to push it to a place where then my muscles aren't recovering for the next day.
I have seen
right?
you do that in
Yeah.
here, and I've watched your body somewhat break down during.
Yeah.
And I've known, and I knew you knew. Like I didn't
Yeah.
say anything to you, but I knew you knew.
Yeah, so when I listen to myself, what I'm really doing is that there's a place I can feel on my muscles where the level of fatigue is such that it's, I'm going to be flat all day long. I don't worry too much about sore muscles and so forth. But I do worry about being in a position where my foot is dropping, my knee kind of collapses back on itself a little bit. My balance gets kind of crazy. I have to kind of touch the wall a couple times as I'm walking. And if I overdo, then that I pay for it in those ways.
Takes away.
Yeah.
It doesn't add to.
But if what I do is I'll do the women's weight instead of the men's weight.
Right.
Okay, and I find that works pretty well for me at this point to be able to do the whole thing. And most days I'm able to do the whole thing.
Yeah, that's not entirely true. I've seen you grab the men's weight quite a bit. So, but you're just playing with it. You're just finding out what works
On some
for you.
things I can,
Yeah.
but on other things I can't.
Do you write that down? Do you go home and put that in, or are you just keeping track of it and staying?
My memory is so bad at this point I can't remember it long enough to take it home and write it down.
Fair enough. Fair enough. At least you're paying attention to it, and that's. I find that it's not right for everybody to write stuff down. It doesn't work for me. I cannot do it. I won't do it.
Before I started here, what I was doing, I have a stack of notes from my workouts that I still keep. 'Cause I go back at them and look to see what I was doing a long time ago. And I thought, oh yeah, I was much stronger at that point. But
Yeah.
but now for me, that's one of the reasons I like GPP fitness so much, is that I know you're engineering this in a minimalist way minimalistic way that allows me to just kind of trust that over the course of a couple of weeks, you're going to give my body the movement that it really needs.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to push myself as best I can to complete as much of that as possible.
Okay, the last two questions. How's your diet? What do you do for diet and why? And then behaviorally, how do you push yourself to even show up down here every day? Let's go diet first.
Okay, diet. Well, one of the things that I did was I changed pretty dramatically my diet from the normal American diet, which I'd had most of my life, to pretty much a Mediterranean type of a diet. Okay.
Higher in fats.
The right kinds of fats, and I really push vegetables, fresh vegetables and fruits, a lot of them. And I forgot to turn that off on me. One of my therapists for my office.
Super formal down here anyway. So.
But I eat a lot of fish. I eat a little red meats, but they're more grass-fed kind of meats where I possibly can. Yeah, I had to switch to a gluten-free diet because of the inflammation in my nerves. I avoid, of all crazy things, legumes because I found that they were. I found that I was having significant weakness after eating those, so I've kind of eliminated those from my diet.
Like where specifically?
Well, if I walked up a set of stairs, it felt like I had a wet bag of cement on each leg.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nothing to your stomach, nothing to the bowel. It was just
just muscle weakness, just pure and simple muscle weakness.
Okay.
So I thought that was really strange, and started looking at it and found that there were a lot of people with MS that say that causes a problem for them. And I guess that some of those strands of DNA in legumes are very similar to the particular proteins that are causing the body to attack the myelin sheaths. So.
Yeah, myelin sheaths. I have heard that and read that too.
Yeah, so it's I do a lot of supplements. Very, very focused supplements. For example, I do really quite a bit of ultra-refined fish oils to get
anti-inflammation.
Yeah, there's a number of micronutrients that reduce inflammation. I try to do most of those. I follow the research if there's anything that would indicate that this particular substance might slow down the deterioration, and I'll jump onto that stuff and I do a fair amount. I do some greens every day, and I'm focusing very much on my microbiome.
That has become a massive thing.
Oh yeah, that's the future of medicine right there.
I've got Charity Lighton is going to come on and talk to us about some probiotics and just the microbiome.
I found the weirdest thing. I was starting to have a lot of nerve pain. Where if I sat in a chair like this for 20 minutes, then I was in serious pain. And through a series of kind of almost spiritual things, I started doing tart cherry juice and some grasses, some wheatgrass and so forth. And I'll be danged if I don't have any nerve pain anymore.
Why? What does the tart cherry juice do?
It has something in it called, let's see, what is it? Anthracyclines, which they're studying right now as the impact on the pain receptors and also an impact on the level of inflammation in the nerves.
Wow.
And so that was something that really worked, that really helped.
Wow.
So I tried a type of a probiotic that was an engineered one that in one study it really solved some problems, some autoimmune problems. And within 6 days of starting that, I couldn't walk upstairs.
You were telling me about that.
And that one didn't work out well. But
what are your thoughts on that? Why did that happen?
I couldn't find the best source I could find on that particular one trying to replicate the study out of the University of Texas, was a source out of Germany, and there were two probiotics in it. And I don't know if it's the combination of the other one or just, I don't know. But
it's so touchy. That
it's really,
stuff,
you know,
it's amazing the effect, just the microbiome. We're starting to learn the effect that it has on your DNA. Like it's interesting, and I'm fascinated.
Every
by
part
it.
of your body, every part of your body.
Yeah, I'm
I
fascinated.
read an interesting thing a few months ago where they were interviewing the last 10 Nobel Prize winners in medicine about the future of medicine in the next 10, 15 years. 8 of the 10 said that the knowledge of the microbiome was going to be the primary driver of health status.
I believe you sent that to me, and
Yeah.
that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are a PhD in human behavior,
Yeah.
a psychologist. How do you motivate yourself to get in here every day to tackle what you have has actual consequences, and you could teeter, your health teeters in the balance. Is it simple for you? Is it complicated for you? What's the process?
The process is simple for everybody, but it requires some things of us. For example, the problem that most people have is that they get themselves motivated to the point where they know they should, they ought to, and they at that point they implement a process because they know they should, they ought to. They haven't moved it all the way to the point where they're making a firm decision that is a well-balanced decision, where they've kind of counted the costs, they've evaluated what they really, really, really want, and they have a vision of what they're trying to achieve. Okay? And so, there's some studies that would indicate that the average length of a New Year's resolution where somebody's into, I should, I ought to, I want to, is somewhere between 8 days and 16 days. On average, and people they don't even remember that's what was going on. So one of the things that we'll do when we're helping people to do that is we'll go through a whole process of self-evaluation where they're genuinely asking themselves, why the heck do I want to do this, and what about that would be important? What's my vision of what I'm trying to accomplish? And we'll have people write out a vision statement of something that's profoundly important to them, that will be a byproduct of making this switch in their health related habits that may involve both exercise and moving into a healthier way of eating and being, and what the functional MRI research is really fascinating, watching all of this stuff. What we're learning is that if we can get this midbrain part of our brain engaged in the process rather than just our frontal cortex, our goal setting
Things
part,
that make the most sense.
that something that has fundamental importance to us, that the place where a new connection, a new neural connection happens is, first of all, at the point that we make a firm decision. It doesn't happen when we're saying, I ought to, I should, I really think I'll try this out, That's not the beginning of a new habit. It's not even forming in the brain, because habits are in your brain. They're not in the rest of your body, right? So if people will do a very thorough evaluation of why they want to do it, what they want to accomplish, and the vision of the benefits of that, then make a firm decision about something they're actually going to do, and they're making the decision to do this not for a while, but for the rest of their life. This is that they're accommodating a change that will have benefits for them in their life. A diet is horrible, the net result of a diet after a year is a net gain of 5%, so all sorts of reasons for that. So
how would I do that? Tell me a step I could take. I want to be a better father. I want more energy to go run around with my kids. That's my primary goal, is just knowing that enough to make it happen.
Knowing that there's a mindfulness part of this whole thing, where what you're doing is you're thinking about that and you're asking yourself some questions like, okay, so what does that really look like? How will I be able to tell if I'm making progress? How will I address it when I find myself giving myself permission not to? Permission distortion, so that I indulge in what I said I wasn't going to. How can I make this so that it works for me? The food I eat is much better tasting, and it's delightful food, right?
Right.
And I go into a restaurant and I'll go through the menu and I'll look down the menu and I'll say, well, there's 3 or 4 things in here that would be really good for me and would taste really good. And I focus on those 3 things, and I eat well and I'm happy because I'm eating well, and I'm not depriving myself. I'm not restricting my calories. I'm just trying to eat a healthy amount of food and try to listen to my body as I eat and see what works well for me.
Do people know? Do they know what works well for them and what is healthy for them right off the bat?
No, but there's a whole movement called intuitive eating.
Yeah.
That I think there's a lot of value in that for people to get started.
Right.
They don't have to become an expert on various kinds of fats and proper amounts of proteins and carbohydrates. What they need to do, because their body will kind of guide them through that, if they'll learn to be more mindful and get out of the denial and the shame-based way of reasoning about it. So there's some really great resources to help people to start there.
Well, what are some resources that you would suggest that you could provide to them? I mean, let's give you a shameless plug. How do they find you and your services?
Well, the problem with my services is that we don't sell our services to individuals.
Okay.
So our services are all sold through corporations or school districts or those kinds of things. So we have about 250,000 people that can come into my services for free.
Yeah.
But there's no way that people could say, hey, I want to go do that through our organization, because we're not in the business of doing that.
It's really actually one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is it's real, it's authentic. The stuff that you're putting out there isn't just stuff you're saying because you're selling it. You're actually living it. Just to make sure I got it right, you're saying listen to your body, be intuitive, be mindful. I feel like that's your message. What I miss?
Yeah, I think so. I think to acquire habits so that it becomes automatic for you generally takes about 70 or so challenges, where you're having to think it through and make it so that you're pushing yourself through it. The more you can make it something that's important to you, then that number decreases. And so if you have something that is really important to you and you've really clearly decided what you want, you're focused on acquiring a particular part of the puzzle for you, whether it be with exercise or with food, then it only generally takes about 20 to 30 times to challenge that. Then it's your new normal, and that's just what you do. And when you're going down the aisle of the store, the stuff you're reaching for, and you're automatically looking at the label to see if it's got stuff in it that you've decided you don't want to put in your body, because you know the effects of that, And then that's your new normal, and that's just how it works. If I travel and I get out of the exercise, the intensive exercise stuff, I don't worry about it, because I know that when I get back in town 5 or 6 weeks later, that even though it'll be a little bit more of a challenge for me, that the first morning, I'll be here, because it's now a firm part of my life, and in my mind I have this vision of me with my grandkids around a campfire, telling them the stories about all of the adventures and drawing the life lessons out of it, and saying as they're all leaning forward, saying to them something like, let me tell you what I learned about life from that, and just watching it absorb in and changing thousands of situations in their life at that moment.
Yeah.
Because they've adopted as a core belief something that would be really useful for them in their life. And to me, that sounds so fun, and I want to be around to do that. And so I've got 15 grandkids at this point. Most of them are still pretty young. You know, we were up on the ski hill a couple months ago at a cabin, and everybody was up on the ski hill that was, 2 years age and above,
Wow.
and we had one of those ski in, ski out places where, we could put the kids for naps and so forth, and all of the kids were there, and we were just having a riot together, playing the games. And see, those are the things that drive me. It's not economics, it's that what I want to do is I want to have a quality of life that involves my preserving my health to be able to experience those kinds of things. So
I don't think it'd be far off to say that's what we all are aiming for. Thanks for sharing that with me.
Thank you.
Appreciate this interview.
You bet. Thanks.